Hey everyone, I'm coming at you from a Tesla Model X Plaid, which is the fastest version of this car that Tesla offer. And when I say the fastest, it's not like the other Model X's are slow at all in any way, shape or form. It's just this one is ridiculously quick in a straight line. It is by far the fastest accelerating vehicle I've ever driven. Now, this isn't my car. This is actually a loaner from Tesla, and I do truly appreciate the guys and girls from Tesla in Austin who've loaned me this vehicle while they're doing some work to my car. Let's cut to some of the headline figures. So this car has 1,020 horsepower. It does 0 to 60. At least this is what Tesla advertised, which is, I'm going to believe them, but I'm thinking maybe it's a little bit on the conservative side, but somebody has to check with Jason Fensky from Engineering Explained whether or not this is complete bullschlack about the 0 to 60 time being 2.5 seconds or 2.6 seconds or whatever it might be. It just feels faster to me because I've been on roller coasters that feel slower than this. So a couple of biases. So I love cars. Anything that I live with for a reasonably long period of time, I tend to fall in love with. Immediately I'm like, oh, I must get one of these. So thankfully I have a wife who has way more number of brain cells than I do and is usually the person saying, don't be stupid, let's not do this, and we don't need this type of performance. And she's right, but I want it. The other factor that is preventing me from perhaps upgrading to this from my Model Y long range, when the lease runs out on that one, is that my Model Y long range lease, the total cost for the lease itself over a 3-year period is around $20,000, or maybe just shy. The total cost of the vehicle itself with the various subsidies that were in place back then equates to about $38,000, or just shy of $38,000 for that Model Y long range 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. This Model X Plaid is close to, or damn near makes no difference, $120,000, which is a little bit more than what my car is worth. So I don't know. Maybe it's not the best financial decision for me. And for the most part, don't take my advice. I mean, in fact, don't take the advice of any random stranger on YouTube would be my first advice to you. And again, I realize the irony of me telling you not to take advice while giving advice, but it's up to you what you want to do with this information, or any of the information I provide on YouTube, or anybody else for that matter. But I love this car. I think it is phenomenally cool as a family vehicle. And in fact, if it wasn't so stratospherically expensive, I would genuinely consider this one. And you might be saying, well, there are cheaper models and maybe the one you're in is a bit too quick. It is a bit too quick. And maybe I can go for one of the lesser models and it would be quick enough anyway, because the lesser models do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, which is far faster than any of the other cars that I've driven apart from this one. This particular one is quite special. And I could go down that route as well, but those are still like 80, 90 grand, and that's still too expensive. But I love it. I love this car. I love the uniqueness of it all. I love the fact that it's got these really, really cool gull wing doors that open. It's got all the space in the world for kids. So you've got a car seat there for a kid. Normally we have a little baby seat there. And you can see like the cavernous space in the back. I've got this is a 6-seater configuration. I've got the back seats folded. So it's basically, you can move house with this thing. It's got the practicality of a van, and it's got this massive screen, huge screen that you can do some really cool stuff with. For example, you can you can control the rear screen as well here. So essentially, when you've got your kids in the back and you want to help them find something to watch, you can switch on YouTube for them, or Hulu, or Netflix. I'm not sure what Twitch is. I think you youngsters can probably explain that to me way better than I can try to sort of Googleize it myself. And anyway, let's go back. You can also lock the rear display, so if there's any infighting going on, the infighting won't spill over to who's watching what and who's scratching whose eyes out. But let's move on from that. The other cool aspects of this car, I mean, there's a little bit of a gimmicky type thing going on. So if you see, like, it says heated yoke. So this thing doesn't have a conventional steering wheel. It's got this thing. I don't know if you can see. It's a yoke. It's like a fighter pilot yoke. This is great when you first get into the car. It gives you this really commanding view over the steering wheel, or the lack of a steering wheel itself, it being a yoke, gives you this wonderful view of this vehicle's instrument cluster, which it has one. My car doesn't have one, so that's always a good thing. So again, another reason to love this thing. And but the gimmicky aspect is, so this yoke is a great idea. And if it was one of these things where it's got this wonderful thing of it being a yoke and it looks like a fighter pilot's yoke and maybe you can take off with it, this thing has a conventional steering rack. This yoke, it turns like it's from lock to lock. You can kind of spin it this way 2 or 3 times. You can spin it the other way 2 or 3 times to get from lock to lock. That means with the lack of the top of the steering wheel, it is actually quite difficult to try to maneuver at low speeds trying to get this big car into little spaces. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to miss this part of the steering wheel. The other complaint I have about this, and again, like I said, I love this car. I will happily put my money where my mouth is and get one of these things if it wasn't stratospherically expensive. But the other thing that I wanted to also highlight is you can get these with a regular steering wheel, but the yoke aspect, the gimmicky aspect, the thing that I don't necessarily like is when we're taught how to drive, especially in England, is you have to put your hand on 10 and 2 p.m. So 10 and 2, 10 and 2. Well, there's no 10 and 2. They've taken half the steering wheel away, so you can't really put your hand on 10 and 2. So that part I'm not entirely sure about, but there are other aspects of the car that is just phenomenal. Like I said, the back seats, great, comfortable, electric, moves forwards and backwards. The back seats cost around $4,000 in addition to the actual asking price of this car, which is quite steep, really, if you think about it, under normal circumstances, primarily because it's $4,000. It does give you that extra 2 seats in the back, and they are usable seats. It does kind of recline backwards and forwards a little bit. The middle seats move forwards and backwards really nicely in the captain's chairs, and the front seats and the middle row of seats are actually heated seats as well, so that's always great. The front seats on this one is actually cooled as well, which is great. This is a function that I don't necessarily have on my Model Y, which I do miss living in Texas. At the moment, the car is actually showing 33 degrees Celsius, so it's blisteringly hot. So the other thing I wanted to also highlight is, again, love the comfort of this thing. I drove it to Houston and back just yesterday. So I've done nigh on 400 miles in one day. And in fact, I've had this car for a few weeks now, and I've done about 1,000 miles or thereabouts, maybe a little bit more. And it's just phenomenally comfortable. Genuinely comfortable. The full self-drive, which this car has, is phenomenally great on long road trips, especially if you're on the highway. It does get confused if there's major roadworks where it's kind of trying to compare where it is on Google Maps to where the car is placed, where the roadworks might be sort of, it's not necessarily a diversion, it's in parallel to the road that it would have normally taken, so that does kind of confuse it. And it does try to take a left or right turn depending upon if you've been offset from the main road where it's expecting to be. So it does make some mistakes, but you can kind of intervene. And the other thing about the yoke that I don't like, just kind of got reminded as I was talking to you about, you know, how the full self-drive takes various diversions or diversions. It's the key thing that flags up by way of a warning as soon as you switch on full self-drive is be alert and keep your hands on the steering wheel. I find that slightly funny, and I don't know if this is actually meant as a joke, primarily because this car has a yoke, but they've taken half the steering wheel away. So the real estate where I can hold is halved or thereabouts. Now, that's not to say the wonderful steering rack from the Cybertruck would be out of place in this car. This car is calling out for that phenomenal steering rack from the Cybertruck. The Cybertruck, that thing there just parked next to me, is just sort of charging up. The Cybertruck has a steer-by-wire system. So for those of you who don't know already, and I'm sure this has been covered many times over, so if you do know, so I apologize, you can skip this part. The steer-by-wire system doesn't have a physical linkage between what you're holding, the steering wheel, and the actual front wheels. It's all operated via sensors, and it is to do with the amount of input you make into the steering wheel. So what that basically means is, with the squircle, and it does have a squircle, so that there is a top part of the steering wheel in the in the Cybertruck or the Cyber Beast, the steering input is 170 degrees this way, and then back to center, and then 170 degrees this way. So it's just literally not even half turn of the steering wheel this way and then back again. So that's your full lock to lock, which is great. And in fact, this yoke would work under those circumstances. So essentially, my gripe with this car, one of my main gripes about this car, this yoke, aside from the fact that you can get a conventional steering wheel, which again alleviates the problem, would be to have the Cybertruck or Cyber Beast steering rack installed into this car, and you can then use the yoke or the squircle, which would be great. So that then alleviates that issue. But even so, even with the faults of having this yoke being what it is, I would still put my money into this car, primarily because the fit and finish is absolutely bloody amazing, because it is nothing. It makes my Model Y seem like it was put together by a 3-year-old. And I do appreciate the fact that the Model Y is a much cheaper car, and I get that ultimately it is more of a, well, less of a premium offering than this car, and again, it's like a third of the price or even less than that. But there's little things that they've sorted out. The steering wheel, or the leather around the steering wheel, is great. The leather on the seats, it's all nice and perforated. It's got these sort of contrasting stitching and piping that goes on. It's a wonderful place to be. It's got like these carbon inserts, but that might be because this is the Plaid model that there's the sort of like the carbon fiber inserts. And I think the shitty crappy wood that comes with my Model Y is not necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but it has this massive, oh, there you go, that's that Cybertruck I was talking about, with the 4-wheel steering as well. That thing is phenomenally amazing. But if you want to know more about that, I've got a Cyber Beast video that you might be interested in. But it's got this phenomenal screen, and the real estate is great. This is actually bigger than most of the TVs that people used to have in their homes, probably in the turn of the century, I would say. And I mean that, in the turn of the century, as in the 2000s, not the 1900s. And also the other thing that I have by way of an issue in my Model Y that this car addresses brilliantly is the charge pads. So if you've got a relatively large modern phone, and these charge pads, and on your modern phone, you've got because these things are about $1,200 to $1,500 right now, these newer phones, and you've got a really nice case to protect it. In the Model Y, the real estate between top and bottom may not accommodate, with the case, your new nice shiny phone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone from whatever manufacturer that you prefer. So this has loads of room. So I've actually tried it with an iPhone 14 Pro Max, and with the case, it doesn't fit into my Model Y's charging pads, but with the case on this one, no problems whatsoever. There is an area here. There is a P, R, N, and D here that lights up if you wanted to kind of do it, change the gear or put the car into gear by pressing actual physical buttons. But that essentially doesn't necessarily work. I would have preferred the Model Y, or my Model Y's version, of just kind of pulling down on the stalk and putting the car into gear that way, especially when you're trying to do like a quick U-turn, and you kind of just misjudge how much space that you have, and you have to quickly put the car in gear, in reverse a little bit, and then sort of nudge back and then go forwards again. That process takes an extra few milliseconds, but it feels like a long time, because essentially you're trying to turn the car around and it doesn't quite work. It's not as I would say intuitive. So that part, I think, maybe a little bit of a gripe for people. There are, again, no buttons to speak of anywhere on the dashboard. Everything is on the central screen. However, I do really genuinely like the fact that you can switch the cameras on just with a press of a button here without needing to go to the screen. So if you're making any sort of maneuvers and there's traffic around you, you can kind of press this button, the camera button, and the cameras come on. It shows you this wonderful view and great clarity on what's around you, including your blind spots right here as well. So that's always good to have. So again, the car is very fast. The car is extremely luxurious. The car is extremely spacious. For a family like mine, well, we need 2 car seats, some prams or strollers, as you guys call them in the US. There's great space in the front. It's much bigger than the one I have in the Model Y, and the one in the Model Y is actually usable as well. So this one's even more practical still. This is an SUV, although technically, if I wink and go like this is like a minivan. If I'm perfectly honest with you, it feels like a minivan. It handles like a minivan as well. So if you're trying to go around a corner, it's got these massive wheels on all 4 corners of the vehicle, and it is so heavy, as I said at the beginning, it doesn't necessarily handle itself or its weight. And because there's this weight distribution error in relation to where the weight is, because of these gull-wing doors, the central gravity is much higher than where it is, or how I'm used to on my Model Y, because the central gravity is much lower, and that car itself is much lighter as well. That all kind of makes a difference. It adds up in many different ways. So again, I love this car. Don't love the price, but I understand why it needs to be that price, because of the performance bracket that you're in with this vehicle. And in fact, This one's limited to 85 miles an hour, and I'm glad for this because every single time I'm joining the freeway, speed limiter kicks in. And in Texas, yeah, you do have highways with 85 miles an hour speed limits, but I would imagine anybody who's not got this limited, surely people are going to end up with so many speeding tickets. It would be unreal. But again, it's just a genuinely comfortable place to be. As I said, I went all the way to Houston yesterday and all the way back from Houston in one day, and it was the most comfortable drive, especially with a full self-drive. So once you click it on, it just goes. And I tend to keep it. There's 3 modes you can have in the full self-drive: chill, standard, and hurry. I tend to keep it in chill because I tend to drive chilled. I'm never in a rush to get to places. I'm not afraid of being late either, and people sort of kind of get used to it because I'm Mediterranean. But ultimately, if you know what you're doing and you are mindful and you get used to the fact that you've got this really weird rear opening doors, which by the way in the UK I had a Vauxhall Mariva which has suicide doors, which is also very cool. So I'm used to sort of weird quirky openings for doors in cars. Once you get used to it, you can probably drive this thing and use the practicality, because you don't necessarily need that much space on the side of the car to be able to open it and close it. But you know what? In any minivan, you also don't need very much space to be able to open the rear doors anyway, primarily because they kind of slide out and slide in.
Bro, them are not words, bro.
For my money, I would buy this car. Although I'm not allowed. Primarily because it's really, really expensive. Wife is against it. It is a waste of money because it's also going to plummet like crazy. I found the second-hand version, as I was saying the other day, and it was selling. It had just over 6,000 miles on it, so practically new. A 2025 version of this vehicle, albeit it is the lesser version, so it does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Boo-hoo, so slow. And it was $69,000, which is still expensive, but damn straight better than $120,000 for this thing. And for the most part, I'm not flooring the car all the time because it is unnerving, and the car doesn't necessarily handle very well, so you can't really chuck it into corners. Although if anybody has ever taken their Model X Plaid to a track day, I'd be very interested to meet you, shake your hand, and buy you a coffee, because you must have testes the size of wheelbarrows. On that note, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys and girls make your own decisions about cars. Again, I reiterate, don't trust anything anybody says online. These weird YouTubers, you've never met them, you've never shaken their hand, you've never looked them in the eye, you don't really know who they are and how much they're lying. So just keep that in mind, keep safe online, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.